Are Murillo and Morgan Gibbs-White set to leave Nottingham Forest this summer? As rumours have it, the club is going to breach PSR yet again. Welcome to your Forest News. Good morning, good evening, or good night. Hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to your latest Forest news. Coming up in today's video, we'll talk you through all the paper talk about Murillo, Morgan Gibbs-White being linked to Arsenal, Liverpool, amongst many other clubs. We'll tell you the latest on Everton's hearing, as a date has now been set and a backstop on the results of that date as well. If you're enjoying the content, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new, and go grab your Taiwo tickets for the signed framed home kit from Football Prizes. The link's in the description and, as always, pinned to the comments. Okay, let's get into this and let's kick this story off with Murillo. So Murillo's leading the headline on this, but Morgan Gibbs-White has been tagged in. And let me just talk you through the story first. Basically, what they're saying is that Forest are very likely to be on the edge of breaching PSR yet again, and will have to sell before the 30th of June deadline. And they're going to have to sell their valuable assets, which of course is our main man, Murillo, potentially Morgan Gibbs-White, and potentially one or two others. Now, the links to Murillo have been in the Premier League to Liverpool and Arsenal. And then outside of the Premier League, clubs like PSG and Barcelona have been linked as well. And there's even talks that Newcastle want him. But what do we believe it is the question. Well, firstly, I say any newspaper reports you hear in an international window are usually them just trying to fill column inches. And with the backdrop of Forest having broken PSR, having had the 4 points deducted from them, then this is an easy story and an easy case for them to make. Now, I can't tell you with certainty, yes or no, if this story is true. We'll be digging up our sources and asking them, and as soon as we know, we'll of course share that information with you. But if we take it on face value, we do have a video coming out soon on how close Forest are going to be to breaking PSR again, because there's a lot of numbers you have to crunch to even come close. And later on this afternoon, hopefully, as long as Kieran can remain free, we've got Kieran Maguire back on. Thank you for all the questions you've put in the community tab. Get them in before 12 and we'll make sure we get asked. We'll ask as many of those questions to Kieran as we can, and you'll get that video later on this afternoon. But let's take it at the moment, for argument's sake, that Forest are close to the PSR limit. This is a huge problem, because Forest can't just tell everyone they're close to PSR, because all that will do is drive the price of the players down. Now, I don't think there's any way in hell that Forest will need to sell two major assets. If you look at Murillo, for me, I think he's worth probably 80 million. Realistically, Forest would probably get 60 million for him. But if clubs who know that Forest are about to break PSR are sniffing and they have to get the deal done before June the 30th, there's no way in hell they go anywhere near that kind of price. You'd probably be looking at 40 million cheeky bids coming in for him. And this is the systemic problem with this PSR BS, because how is it fair in a corrupt system that a team has to sell their best assets at cut prices just to make sure they don't incur any potential point deductions in the league? This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying about the corrupt system, the system that's heavily balanced towards the so-called big six, that they can buy up all the players and we have to suffer. It's almost like a conveyor belt, isn't it? It's like a buffet where Forest and the other 14 clubs have to take the risks, have to go to the South American leagues, to the Portuguese leagues, to, the Far East leagues and all these things, and find these players, take the risk whether they will flop or not. And then the ones that don't flop, they sell. And the ones that have flopped, they end up having to make a team with. It's just going to create a bigger and bigger divide going forward. Now, I don't actually think these stories are true because, as I said, I think in the international window, there's a lot of BS. But as I said, I can't confirm one way or another. But my question to you guys is, if you had to sell one of Murillo and Morgan Gibbs-White, which one would you sell? Now, bearing in mind, Morgan Gibbs-White cost us about 28 million plus add-ons that we're still paying off. It could go up to about 38 to 42 million, depending on those add-ons. Don't think it will ever reach that. So don't believe all the TalkSport numbers you hear for him. Murillo costing us, what, about 11 million? It's a tough one, isn't it? Because Morgan Gibbs-White's value is probably somewhere, I would say, between 50 and 60 million. But the profit margin on that, because he's not one of our homegrown players, that would automatically make his profit a lot smaller than, say, a Murillo, who if you sold for 50 million, you're making at least 30 million profit on that, minus agent fees and everything else. But I'll be honest with you guys. If I had to pick one, I kind of have become too attached to Murillo right now. Maybe that's because Morgan Gibbs-White's corners just give me nightmares still. They're both talented players. Don't get me wrong here. I wouldn't like to lose either one, and especially not to another Premier League team. But if you had a gun to my head, I'm keeping Murillo. Get that answer to that question, though, down in the comments below. Let's move on to the second story, which is, of course, not directly Forest linked, but quite important to things that are going to shape up for the rest of the season. And that's the date being announced for Everton's second charge. So this is going to be conducted next week. And with the Premier League breathing down heavily on the independent panel's throats, they're going to have to work through the Easter weekend to get this one done and dusted, because the Premier League have added on top of this a backstop for the announcement of the Everton charge, which is going to be the 8th of April. And this in itself shows you the corruption and the pressure that the Premier League are adding, because they are so desperate to get this all done and dusted before the end of the season. So how is it, I ask you guys, that Everton's first charge took from November until what, February for us to hear about? And then Forest's charge gets done in a couple of weeks. And now Everton's charge is going to have to get done in less than 2 weeks as well. How come that first bit took 3 months, but suddenly they can speed up and expedite the process? It's a little strange, isn't it? I stand where I stand on this, and I have for a long time. I don't want to see Everton lose any points, but we will be asking Kieran about this and the likelihood that they do lose points, because the Everton fan base seem convinced that the max they're going to see is 2 points, because they've already been penalised for 2 of those 3 years from their PSR report last time. However, if you read the Forest report and the breakdown of how those points were allocated, 3 points are given almost automatically for a substantial breach of PSR rules. So potentially Everton could be getting at least 3. Watch this space, we'll keep you updated on it. And if you're an Everton fan watching, how do you feel about all of this right now? Things are getting messy. They really are. Although Forest have had their points, there is still talk that a potential appeal will go ahead, and Forest are weighing up the pros and cons of doing that. Remember, we have 7 days from the announcement to do that. So Forest may wait until midweek before making that announcement. Of course, the question on every Forest fan's lips is, can they be penalised more by appealing? Is this like a red card scenario where if you appeal, you could go from a 1-match ban to a 3-match ban? Again, we'll be asking Kieran those questions this afternoon and seeing if he knows the answers to those. My gut feeling says, from the strength of the letter, potentially Forest are making a statement to say we are not happy, but we will accept it. But you just never know with Marinakis. We don't know how angry he is, and we don't know how much he wants to throw behind it. I personally say, roll the dice. Because it is very unlikely, even if Forest can incur a harsher penalty, that a panel would overturn the original decision and make the decision worse. It would be almost historic if that happens in a case like this. But those questions will be answered shortly when we sit down with our good mate Kieran Maguire. But get your thoughts in on all of that down below. And I really want to hear from you guys. Do you think it's fair if Forest have to sell Murillo or Morgan Gibbs-White? And if we have to, which one of those two would you put in the guillotine first? If you haven't already, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. Go grab your Taiwo tickets if you haven't got them already. And make sure you tune in later on this afternoon for the interview of Kieran. You're going to love it. Come on, you Reds.